will do my participation to this fantastic, generous, and very dense meeting and that we have all together by just talking a little bit about my work itself. And so I can start. Maybe a little, the light, the curtain, the lights. So this, it's a very early work I did in 2003. I was just out of art school, and I was invited to do a group show in Thailand, in Bangkok, in a university. And that moment in particular was a little bit strange because when we were in the plane to fly from Paris to Bangkok, United States started the war in Iraq. And it was all this very suspense, a moment of suspense when we didn't know if they will attack or not. The UN Council condemned it, and so we didn't know. So when I arrived, by reading all this UN Council resolution text, I was a little bit surprised by the ending of the resolution text. So I took one of the formula they use a lot to end the resolution text, that was decides to remain seized of the matter. And I like this sentence because it means something strange. I don't know if it's a real translation or not. In French, it's also strange. It's décide de demeurer saisi de la question. So you have to be seized of the matter. And so I decided just to write this sentence in the wall by keeping the same things, like this side it's in italic and the other it's normal. And I thought that it was also the rule or the rule of an artist. It's to decide to remain seized of the matter, and it's the same than also the UN Council, like to decide to remain seized of the matter. But it's very open. There is not a precise decision at the end, but it just opens the fact that we will still questioning ourselves about what to do with this political situation. And a little later, 2009 in Kassel, I came back to the resolution text of the UN Council, and I did this work called Resolution Partition. And I did a list with all the resolution text of the UN Council that were related to the Israelo-Palestinian conflict. So I just, I wrote all this text. I wrote many books about it. It's a very complex situation, and me as an artist, I cannot just end it, this conflict, unfortunately. But I started to classify all this text. So I had this layer of files, and I got also a list to find myself easily inside. And I've ended with this list of numbers. And it's all the numbers of UN resolution text about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I give it to a musician composer, to create a play with the idea of the dodecaphonic music. So it was a piano piece with a quarter tone piano piece, and it was playing in the room of the museum. And I can say many things about that, but it remembers me a lot the Goldberg variation of Bach. It was written for somebody very important that asked Bach to compose him something to make him found back his sleep because he was insomniac. And Bach wrote this fantastic Goldberg variation, and it was not it's not very quiet music, so it was very active. So I thought that maybe it was how to compose a piece of music with a little part, and then you turn it in all the sides. So that's how I read like the Goldberg variation. And he asked to his student, to his best student at that moment, Goldberg, to play it in the room near the bedroom of the Comte de Kaiserling. And so I leave open the door there in the back. And I put in the space this dièdre, this things used for the acoustic chamber that absorb the sound. But I mix it with some concrete one that's normally reflecting the sound. So I try to work with this paradox of the material. And there is like many numbers as you can see. And it was made with charcoal, the one used to burn fire and to make your barbecue. It's a very simple material, and I did it directly in the wall, and I left the ashes in the ground. In the room, in the next room, normally supposed to be the quiet room for the Count to be able to sleep, I present a few work, and a very older work. It's the second hand of a watch. I can say many things, but I won't stop on every work, but I go to that work that was in the floor. It's called La Dégradation. And I was just wondering myself, you heard about like the Dreyfus story, like the Dreyfus case in France, and to publicly punish Dreyfus, we did a ceremony called La Dégradation. So we asked him to come in a courtyard outside in front of everybody with his military costume, and somebody was taking off all the ornaments of the military ornament that he have on his costume, and break also the yes. And because I just asked myself, what could be the scene after the degradation? What happened after, when everybody left, when Dreyfus left, when the public left, when the hierarchy left? And I was just wondering what is in the floor when you do this very humiliating thing called la dégradation. So I tried to just remake it. So I found some costume of this moment of history, and I found myself in a chair with this costume and taking off by myself. So the gesture was very violent, and I felt very uncomfortable because I did not plan that. I didn't plan that I will put myself in the situation of the punisher. So I did it, and this is the work. And it's not easy, like to break a sword. It's really something. I really learned something when I did that. It took me hours. And just to be short about some question I have sometime, I just ask myself, what happened after something? What happened after an event? What happened after an action? What's happened after a gesture? And as an artist, it's interesting to think about what happened after a gesture. And here I was like reading like newspaper, TV, and all that, and there were a lot of stoning ceremony in some part of the world, and I was just wondering what could be a landscape after a stoning. And so I did a stoning, but with nobody, of course, and of course not a woman, but I just put like a piece of something, and I threw the stones. It was very violent gesture. I am a very calm person, but sometimes I have to do things, and also it was how it could be related also to this kind of land art, and so I thought that it's a very paradoxal situation to think about the aesthetic of something. I really felt that it was a professional deformation for myself to think, oh, what is a landscape after a stoning? But also there is a space of the missing body, the missing, and yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And before, I won't say the date all the time because it's sometimes I go through in my, I try to find a good combination of work. This work is called À chaque stencil une révolution, for each stencil a revolution. And I collect for many years some stencil paper, blue one, black one, white one, yellow one, red one. And on the blue was really something really important to me because it was the one stencil, one carbon paper that can be used to duplicate something. And it was used in my childhood when I was a kid, when you do like some exercise, and they do some duplication, and it was a very strong smell of alcohol. And I always remember that. And then when I found myself what I can duplicate, then I came back to some origin I know from that. It was my scholar history, but it was also linked to the late student movement in Paris in the late 60s, like in 68. And it was a perfect tool to duplicate political message in your basement. The machine is big like that. You just need alcohol, a few paper of carbon, and then you can duplicate a lot of message and drop it in the street. And so the first time I did it was in 2007. That was in 2008. And I was just wondering what kind of message me now in 2007 I can say, what kind of political message I can just give to the people. And then I collect a lot of this kind of message, and finally I found myself that I have like maybe nothing to say or nothing to revindicate on. But the only thing I wanted to say is it was my gesture. It was just a gesture of using the real material, the carbon, and the alcohol, the white spirit, like the spirit, methylated spirit used for that, and just to show the absence of a message. So I only show the gesture and affecting the monochrome of the carbon, and that's all. So it can look like a crying wall, it can look like a humid hammam, or there is like a lot of possibility of reading, and I'm really not, I don't mind if we can have like multiple lecture. And on the sentence, à chaque stencil une révolution, for each stencil a revolution, I found it in a quotation of Yasser Arafat, and he said that about, at that time in history, in the late 60s, for each stencil, you've got a revolution that could start it everywhere. So, and he was telling that, like in all the parts of the world, it was the stencil possibility, and as a matrix of a revolution. And yes, it was in the other room. I will say later about the flag, but this little box is called a sub box, and I just found it was in the level 2 gallery in Tate Modern, and I just found this box because I need a sub box. I thought, okay, it's a show in London, maybe I can do something about like London, what we can do, like, and like when a museum invited you to express, like to say something, I felt like it's my speaker corner, like the exhibition space is my speaker corner. So I need to find a box to be able to do a speech or to the possibility of making a speech. So I found this box in the art handling department of the museum, and I keep it after. And so I just put it in the space. And later in Venice, so they invite me for a group show. It was in the international, like the Italian pavilion, but represented the international show of the international artist. And this space is surrounded by national pavilion. And I say what it is to express something like the idea of nationality in Venice is very strong. And I thought that, okay, but it's also a competition. So we can say, okay, we are all together, but they are competing in it in a way like to be like the pavilion, the national pavilion that will have the prize or something. And it's so defined, like each nation, that I wasn't comfortable with that. So the idea was to put these flagpoles, because you have possible flagpoles in front of each pavilion. Sometimes they are on and sometimes off, it depends on the artist. So I decided to put several ones and to just change the angle and put them in several directions. And like that, they were just crossing each other. This work is called Fantasia. And I was just inspired for the title of, if you know, in Morocco, you have this horse, people on horse with the guns and with the rifle, and say, pff, and you have the fantasia. They all go together, and the perfect fantasia when you have like several shots, but you hear only one sound. And so I choose the title for that. And here we are in a. It was my first show in a museum in United States. It was in Columbus, and the Museum of Modern Art in Columbus. And I was very looking for, because it was a favorite museum of Gertrude Stein, and they have also an amazing collection about social American art and this story of okay. And so they have a special story about like social American art. So I put some tumbleweeds, like in the Western, so for me it's a very cliche things, but dry. And in the wall, I put this lithographic stone painted in black, and I use the size of some lithographic prints that are inside the collection of the museum. And it's a lot of, it's a Schiller collection, and it's a collection that is about this dark moment of the American society when you have a lot of poorness, like when you have like Spanish refugees dying, when you have the Ku Klux Klan things and a lot of poorness, and so I choose several of this lithographic print, and I keep only the size. I try to find the same kind of lithographic stone, the same size, and I just painted in black, and I keep only the title. So, for example, you have one called Southern Night. On Southern Night, it's a field of grass, and you have a light, and you have a Ku Klux Klan costume visible, and then you have a black man escaping. But it's Southern Night, like the name. So you have that in the title, in the caption, but you do not have the image of that. I only know, but a lot of things are like that. And it's, this is called Charlie Brown Poppies. It's a show I did, an exhibition I did in Beirut, in Lebanon, in a Verbier Art Center. I just work with the earth of Beirut because it was a very red earth, and we visit a lot of political things like the archive of the war, and we visit some refugee camp, and I was very aware about the civil war, and when I just saw the ground around me, it was so red. I'm not used to that. In Morocco a little, but in Switzerland or in France, the earth is like brown. But there it was red, and yeah. on that, I just thought about this story of the Peanuts comics called Charlie Brown's Poppies, Charlie Brown, and they make something about the poppies, and trying to explain why the poppies are red. And he wrote something about the song called Flanderfield, and this little theory he wrote in these things that the blood is coming from the red of the poppy is coming from the blood from soldier died in the war. So when I was looking at this red floor around me, I was thinking of that and thinking about the civil war in Lebanon, because it's still very visible and it's still very sensitive when you are there. And then yes, I can go. So maybe maybe that one. Yeah, maybe that one. It's not very clear. It's an exhibition I did in Istanbul, and the title is Farewell Later, and I just collect some farewell later from young people leaving their family and going to the jihad in Syria, and I was interested in how you handle this feeling, like these young people writing to their mother, say, goodbye forever, sorry, I am leaving, I'm believing my faith, and I believing that I can help people, and I believe that I can do something for the kid dying there. And so for me, it's strange to deal with that, but I try to think about that, this feeling of sadness, and I did some extract of the letter, and I make it right in the floor with water. So you are not able really to read it because it's always dry and you have to go all the time. But for me, it was a fact that you are just showing time passing by, and maybe this innocence or this kind of involvement they had, it just passed away until the moment they arrive there and they start to kill people. And so I'm open for question later on so thank you for the audience.